Shabbos is Parshas Zocher, where according to most Shitas there's a Chiyuv Daraisa to come and to hear the Parsha of Zocher read from the Torah with the minyan, the Parsha at the end of Kiseitze, Zocher Asher Asal L'cha Amalek. So the question I want to discuss for a few minutes is that we know that we have a mitzvah of Parsha Zocher, of remembering that which Amalek did to us. Zocher es asher asal l'cha Amalek. So if you were to think about it, you would probably conclude that what is the best way to remember that which Amalek did to us? To read the Parsha, which discusses what Amalek did to us. So therefore it would seem more appropriate if Chazal were to institute a specific Parsha in the Torah, which we are going to use to be Mekayim our mitzvah Parsha Zocher. So l'cha'ora we should be reading the Parsha at the end of Bishalach, which describes that which Amalek did to us. The mitzvah is Zocher es asher asa l'cha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you. So why am I reading the Parsha which commands me to remember what Amalek did? Wouldn't it be more sensible to read the Parsha which actually describes what Amalek did? We know that many of the Farshim understand that the Parsha, the reading of Amalek, is there to inspire us to continue the battle, continue the fight. So if that's the point of it, so I should probably be reading the Parsha which discusses their terrible vengeance that they took on Klal Yisrael, the terrible act against Klal Yisrael, and that's going to inspire a sense of revenge, and therefore I'll attack them. Why are we learning Parshas Kiseitze, Zocher es asher asal l'cha Amalek, where we have the tzivoy of Parshas Zocher, rather than Parshas Bishalach, Vayavoy Amalek, where we actually learn about the attack of Amalek. But to begin this, we have to understand a more basic question, and that is, we know that there is a chiyuv to remember Amalek forever, Zocher es asher asal l'cha Amalek, and there's a chiyuv forever to wipe out the people of Amalek. And the question is, why is Amalek unique? Why is Amalek different? Klal Yisrael has many, many adversaries. If you were to read the Torah itself, you would certainly, and I were to ask you, based on the stories, the episodes in the Torah, which nation should we take tremendous revenge against? We would probably say Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim kept us hostage. Mitzrayim kept us slaves for hundreds of years. So Amalek attacked us. We've been attacked many times throughout history. Why is it that the Rebbeinu Shalom is mitzvah that we remember we have to kill Amalek, l'dar midar l'dar, for every generation we have a continuous tzivoy to kill Amalek? It's not true when it comes to Mitzrayim. It's not true when it comes to other nations that fought Klal Yisrael. And we have a mitzvah to remember that as well. It's not enough to have a tzivoy which tells us that we have to kill them. We have a mitzvah to remember, lest we forget, an added mitzvah to remember what they did to us, to make sure that we carry through with it. So to understand this, we have to take a look at a very interesting comment, a well-known comment from Reb Chaim Soloveitchik. It's said in his name, I don't think he wrote it anywhere, but the Talmidim of Reb Chaim at least claim that Reb Chaim made the following argument, and it's based on a diuk in the Rambam, where Reb Chaim said as follows. If you take a look at the Rambam makes an interesting distinction between the obligation to wipe out Amalek and the obligation to wipe out the Zayin Amim that were in Eretz Yisrael, that were in Eretz Canaan before Klal Yisrael took over. The Rambam writes that when it comes to the Zayin Amim, this mitzvah no longer applies, Kvar Ovad Zichram, because Basan Cherev, Ubilbul and Kola Uma is therefore Kvar Ovad Zichram, they don't exist anymore, so the mitzvah is no longer applicable. However, the Rambam doesn't say this when it comes to Amalek. Says Reb Chaim, perhaps what the Rambam is trying to indicate to us is that maybe even after Balsan Cherev Bilbul and Umos, even though there's no clear, defined nation that we call Amalek, perhaps Amalek still exists. Amalek exists not necessarily in the nationhood, but in the hashkafa, in the concept, in the philosophy of Amalek, they still exist, and therefore, even though there are no nation that we have to wage war, but those that espouse different philosophies which are anti-Yiddishkeit, we have an obligation to eradicate those philosophies. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman brings in his Kovetz Mamorim from the Chofetz Chaim, Vishamati mehakodesh bal Chofetz Chaim oidois, different people at the time, the Bolsheviks, the Cossacks, different people at the time, where the Chofetz Chaim says, by mir is borer, it's pasha to me, shehem mizera Amalek, that these people, obviously, you can't say that they're from the nationality of Amalek, but what the Chofetz Chaim seemingly meant was that these people are carrying on the philosophy of Amalek, and therefore we treat them like Amalek. But my question to you is, that's a very nice idea, it's a very good diuk in the Rambam, that perhaps Amalek is not necessarily limited to a specific nationality, but Amalek is a philosophy. But where in the world do we get this from? The Torah says that we should be Timcha Zecher Amalek. Where in the world do we get... No, Amalek doesn't mean the nation of Amalek. Amalek means the philosophy. Amalek means the ideas. The Amalek means the sinna of Klal Yisrael. So that's what Amalek means. And therefore, whenever a nation is attacking the Jews at that specific time, that is the Amalek of that. Where do we get this from? Where in the Torah is there any indication that this is true? I'll even go further. If you take a look at the Goin writes in a few places that Amalek even has some remnants in Klal Yisrael. If you take a look at the Goin, they quote from the Evan Shlema, Ha'erev rav dvukim ma'oid b'Yisrael v'Yisrael loimdim imasayem v'chameshem mine erev rav. One of the types of erev rav u'bali machloikas hem gru mikulam v'hem nekroim amalekim. Says the Goin, there are aspects of Klal Yisrael themselves that are considered to be a bechina of Amalek, ve'ein ben David ba'at sheyimchu min ha'olam. Amalekim heim Roshei Yisrael begalos. There are members of Klal Yisrael which are considered to be a little bit from the bechina of Amalek. Now, what does that mean? Where do we get this from? That Amalek seems to be a notion, a concept, and different people could adopt that type of concept. Amalek in the Torah is a nation. And where do we get the idea that we could say, no, it's a concept, it's an idea, any anti-Semitic group of people, they are the Amalek of that generation. Again, an interesting diuk in the Rambam from Reb Chaim, but where did the Rambam get this from? So I think it's clear that if this in fact is the case, in fact Chazal understood this from the Psukim, because the Psukim themselves have interesting lishonos, interesting language when it comes to the obligation to kill Amalek. For instance, the Torah itself says midar dar, that it's going to be from one nation to another nation. It's not something that the Torah normally says when it comes to wiping out the other Zayin Umos, because that's not something which lasts forever. You kill them and then it's over, or they become lost. No nation lasts forever. What's the pasuk coming to say? Midar dar, in every single generation. But furthermore, with the way that the Torah describes us destroying Amalek is never Timcha Amalek, it's Timcha as Zeicher Amalek. Now, if you take a look at the Mefarshim al HaTorah, they of course address this, and it means that you can't leave anyone alive, the animals, no men, no women, no children, but the language itself seems to say Timcha as Zeicher Amalek means that perhaps Amalek will no longer be here, but there will be a remnant of Amalek, perhaps an idea, a philosophy, perhaps Amalek left their imprint on this world, and the Torah is being mitzvah you. It's not enough for you to eradicate Amalek, Chazal understand, but you have to eradicate the ideas which Amalek brought to the world. That's what it means, Timcha es Zeicher Amalek. Torah doesn't say destroy Amalek. If the Torah said destroy Amalek, we would understand like the other Zayin Amen. That means destroy the nation of Amalek. But the Torah says Timcha es Zeicher Amalek. That means destroy Amalek, but destroy any residue of Amalek. Any difference they made in the world, any philosophy that they brought, they introduced, any level of suffix in terms of the Rabbeinu Shalom's omnipotence, in terms of the Rabbeinu Shalom's control over the world, eradicate as Zeicher Amalek. Perhaps it was from that word that Chazal understand that it's not enough, and not just an obligation to destroy the nation of Amalek, but the idea of Amalek. And in every generation, different nations, different people go ahead and they take the ideas of Amalek and they fight with those ideas and they advance those ideas and then they adopt the identity of Amalek, which is very interesting to me because when I understood this, so it changes your entire perspective on our obligation to destroy Amalek. It's not about destroying Amalek per se, but it's destroying the difference that Amalek made in the world, the residue that the Amalek made in the world. And I think it's almost explicit in the Psukim. Throughout all of the Sfarim HaKadoshim, Amalek is, even in Chazal themselves, you see clearly, Chazal in many Midrashim, even Shas a few times as well, compare Amalek to what animal? The Nachash. The Goyen compares him to a Kelev in specific places for separate reasons, but Chazal always describe, and there are psukim throughout Tanakh as well that indicate, the Chazal Darshan, that Amalek is considered to be a Nachash. Now, why do Chazal describe Amalek as a Nachash? Well, how does a Nachash kill? It's not like a lion that tears you apart. The Nachash inserts in your body some sort of venom, and that venom destroys you. The koyach of Amalek is not necessarily with their weapons that they were going to overpower us in war. The koyach of Amalek, like a snake, is that they were going to inject their philosophies in Klal Yisrael, and that philosophy, that venom, will destroy us. I think this is the pshat in the pasuk. Vayizanev becha kol hanechashalim acharecha. Such a strange way of saying that Amalek attacked us. Vayizanev becha kol. What's this word of vayizanev? So we know Rashi brings an interesting medrash about a zanov of tail. Chazal say that a nachash is doime to a zanov. It looks like a tail. A nachash moves like a tail. Vayizanev becha kol nechashalim acharecha means the way that Amalek attacked you was similar to the way that a snake attacks. They injected their philosophies within you. They poisoned you. Vayizanev becha kol nechashalim acharecha. They attacked you with the koyach of a nachash. I'll give you another fascinating gematria I saw that I think it supports this idea. What is the difference between a dalid and a resh? If you look at a dalid and a resh, it's almost the same ois. The only difference is a little thing at the right end of the dalid that goes up, which Chazal referred to as a koitz. That's the difference between a dalid and a resh. In fact, the dalid is 4, the resh is 200. If you take 4 away from the resh, you get 196, which is gematria koitz. The difference between a dalid and a resh is merely a koitz. Now, what is a koitz? A koitz is a thorn. In fact, in the lashon of Chazal and the lashon of the Torah, how do we refer to a thorn? Dar, because it's a dalid resh. Dalid Reish. That is a koitz. A Dalid and a Reish. The difference between Dalid and Reish is a koitz. The difference in Gematria is a koitz. So the way the Torah describes a koitz is a dar. That's what the Torah says in koitz dar in Parshas Bereshis. So if that is the case, that a dar is a koitz. Vayizanev becha kol hanechashalim acharecha. What is a koitz? What is a koitz? A koitz is a thorn. A koitz is a thorn. A thorn is something which remains in you even after you've left. The koyach of Amalek, that the Torah says that Amalek we're going to attack midor dor. What's midor dor? Take a look at midor dor. Dor and the Torah is usually written with a vav. All of a sudden over here, dor is written without a vav. Why? Because the koyach of Amalek, vayizanev becha kol nechashalim acharecha, is not in the attack, but the remnant they have on Klal Yisrael, the venom that remains in Klal Yisrael, the philosophy which their attack continues, after the attack continues to linger, that's like a koitz, that's like a thorn. And therefore, midor, without a vav, a remnant that Amalek, the koyach of Amalek, is not in the attack, but in the residue that remains after the attack. Now we have a very interesting insight. If we understand that the koyach of Amalek is not in the attack, but in the residue that remains within Klal Yisrael. Vayiz like a snake, a nochash. Vayizanev becha kol nechashalim acharecha. Like a dardor, midor, like a koitz. So now we go back to the original, the first parsha in the Torah, with Adam Harisha. Of course, there's a snake in that story. We can't be We can't forget the snake, the Nachash HaKadmoni, which is obviously representing Amalek, the koyach of Ra, like a snake always represents. The snake tries to give some level of suffix to Chava, tries to infect Chava, if you will, with some philosophy. And that ends up being the beginning of Chava and Adam's downfall. Adam eats from the Eitz Hadas. Adam eats from the Eitz Hadas. Haman min ha-Torah min ayin. Again, Amalek min ha-Eitz Hazeh. Why? Because the first koyach of Amalek was right there at the beginning. The Nachash confected Chava with his philosophy that caused Chava and Adam to follow the koyach of Amalek, which is the koyach of Haman, the same exact thing. Hamin ha'etz hazeh, he eats from the Eitz Hadas. What's the punishment for such a thing? What does the Torah say? The Torah tells us the punishment for Adam was v'koitz v'dardar tatzmiach. Meaning, it wasn't necessarily your contact with Amalek, but it was the dardor, it was the thorn which remains within you. It is the venom from the snake that remains within you. The koyach of Amalek is not the conflict itself, but the influence, the impact, the residue that they left on Klal Yisrael. And that's in fact what the Ramban says. After he ate from the Eitz Hadas, the Ra, the Nachash, the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, whatever you will, whatever you call it, says the Ramban, became a part of Adam. It used to be external. Now it was internal. Why? That's the koyach of Amalek. The koyach of Amalek is the ability to infect Klal Yisrael. That even after the compact, we beat the war of Amalek. So why are we still fighting? We beat them in war. Midor dar. Why is it something continuous? Because they had an impact. They left the residue. They made a mark on us, and we have to eradicate that. The eradication of Amalek is not an eradication of an external nation. Every so often there's a new nation which arouses within us the sveikos, the philosophy, which already became part of us from the original Milchama of Amalek. But it's within Klal Yisrael. Amalek infected us with their philosophies. And that's why the Goyin could write that, yes, there are members of Klal Yisrael that represent Amalek. Because what Amalek did to us was they infected Klal Yisrael. The level of suffix, the level of doubt that we have in the Rabbeinu Shalom, the level of lack of understanding of Hashkacha, all of that came from the infection which, the thorn, the venom which remains within Klal Yisrael from that original meeting with Amalek. So we ask the question, why is it that Amalek's war is forever? We don't say never destroy, continue to fight Mitzrayim. We don't say whenever any other nation that Klal Yisrael fought with. We don't say there's a mitzvah of la'olam va'ed to remember and to fight forever. Because we're not taking revenge on a war that was. The problem is that that war had a lingering effect. And that war left a residue. And even though we won the war, the physical war, they infected us with their philosophies. There's still a kite, there's still a thorn, there's still venom within Klal Yisrael. And the milchama of Amalek is to eradicate that. This is why we don't lay in Parshas Beshalach. If we were to lay in Parshas Beshalach and Parshas Zachor, we would think that the mitzvah of Mechias Amalek is they attacked us in war, and now we're going to fight them. Vayaval Amalek, they came, they attacked us, and now we're going to fight them. No. That's not what Amalek is about. No other nation that enslaved Klal Yisrael, Mitzrayim, Amalek, no other nation that fought Klal Yisrael, do we have a chiyuv to obliterate them beyond even the nation of the Zayin Amin. Again, Basan Cheir, Bilbul, and Kol Umos. Only Amalek. Why? Because it's not about the fact that they attacked us. It's the fact that they injected their philosophy within us. And that's something that we have to eradicate. That's not clear from Parshas Beshalach. Where is that clear from? Parshas Kiseitzi. Vayizanev b'cha kol nechal shelim acharecha. We see that the way that Amalek attacked us was through infiltrating and influencing us in our philosophies and our ideas, that we at Klal Yisrael remain changed. We're different because Amalek attacked us. They cooled us down, if you will. They introduced the concept of suffix into our lives. That's what we're trying to eradicate. the impact that they had on our lives, ad hayoim hazeh. And that only becomes clear in Parshas Kiseitze. Vayizanev b'cha kol nechashalim acharecha v'ata yefa yagei. And you were weak, they weakened you. And that's why you have to eradicate them, midor dor, forever. Because this is not about wiping out Amalek. This is about wiping out Zeicher Amalek, any remnant, any residue of Amalek, which certainly remains in the world, and says the Goyin even remains within Klal Yisrael.